Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Say Slay podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Today's guest is Katherine Wardell. To me, she's Kat, but Katherine Wardell. She is a current student at Oklahoma State University, double majoring in theater and secondary education history. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but she is my best friend on the whole planet, and I thought, who better to have as my first guest than Kat Wardell?
I do, and I've never told you this
informal
before.
definition of slay: to greatly impress, or
like so on brand for
girl,
me.
you impressive, stylish, or successful. Slay in your vocabulary.
Oh, slay. Whoa.
It's on Netflix. It has.
Do you say slay?
So
So
slay.
is slay a word you use every
You mean
day?
to do these, Clasha? Say slay.
Hey, Kat.
So excited.
Okay, so we're just gonna dive right in.
This feels so professional. You are a great professional working audio engineer, and the sound mixer. So I would expect that I was. I'm so giggly. Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, how did we meet? And when we met, was like there a first impression you had of me, or do you remember thinking anything super specific when we met?
I do, and I've never told you this before. So, for all the listeners out there, we met during my college orientation. So, I graduated high school spring 2020. So, all of my orientation for college was all online. And Liz was actually my orientation leader. So, I met on a Zoom call with her, and she chatted with me and told me all about OSU and whatever. And then I came back later for more questions that I had, and we ended up talking for 4 hours, in which she met my mom on the Zoom call. And I remember I enjoyed our conversation so much, but I didn't know how to end it. And that was my first impression. I was like, love her. She talks a lot though, and I didn't want to be rude, but I kept trying to end the conversation. But then we were just talking about anything and everything.
Yes, I couldn't figure out how to end the conversation either, and I felt so bad because it was my literal job to talk to you. So it was because you came back for since it was Zoom, we couldn't really require people to come to the Q&A sessions, really. But whenever I heard that there was a theater major, I really encouraged it. I was like, come to the Q&A session. We can do a separate breakout meeting, and I will tell you everything about the theater department if you want to know. And so when you did, I was like, oh, this is going to be so great. Yes. And then I met your mom, which was hilarious. And then
So weird.
So weird. And then
But so on brand for me.
Right. And then I remember Sam coming up to me and being like, are you still on Zoom with us? And I was like,
No way.
yeah. And he was like, the workday is over. Get up. And that's when I was like, okay, orientation's over, but you can follow me on Instagram. Here's my number. Here's my stuff.
I know, because I remember you took the Zoom into the hallway, and I remember seeing everybody in the hallway.
Right.
And then you were like, okay, bye.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
bye.
Work's kind of over. So, but I remember telling my bosses about it, and they were like, no one else has talked that long with anyone for orientation. So we broke some kind of record.
We were just meant to be best friends.
Where are you currently living? And what is your favorite and least favorite part about where you currently live? In terms of the town, not the physical apartment you live in.
So I live in Elizabeth Calandra's old unit, actually. Funny story. No, but I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And it's so weird because when I was a freshman, I really didn't like it here. And for context, my brother goes to school in California and is 20 minutes away from the ocean and a eucalyptus forest. So he would send our family pictures of that, and I would be like, here's a cow pasture. I don't know what you want me to do. So it was really hard to like, felt like I belonged here for a while, but I, made it work for me, and now I really love it here. I would say my favorite thing is just like the small town vibe is something I have really grown to enjoy. Especially, I remember talking to my brother about it one time, and he was like, we're only in these places for 4 to 5 years.
Right.
And so it's cool to get to experience life from a different perspective.
Right.
And I think that really shifted my mindset. I was like, you're so right. Because now like my hometown is so busy and is growing rapidly. And it's like, I kind of like the smaller town vibe, which is something I never would have expected. My least favorite part, there's a couple, I think. I think I wish it was closer to a more of a city area. Like, granted, it's only an hour away, but it makes it easy to just like not want to leave your house.
Right.
So I wish it was more connected to a metropolitan area.
Right.
And I just wish it was just like closer to more acting opportunities, unless you're like really plugged into the Oklahoma film market and you're signed up on the right email list. It can be kind of hard to find. So you really have to make it work for you. But I think I've, done that. So.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of remote.
Off of what your brother said about the whole you only live there for 4 years thing, that was so much why I went to Oklahoma State, to get a new perspective, and nobody could like wrap their head around that, because I was from New York and I always lived in a city or right next to a city. And so I was like, why would I want to go somewhere for 4 years and live the same exact way I've lived for 18 years already? I might as well see the complete opposite thing and see if I like that more. So then afterwards, I know where I want to end up.
Right.
Okay, next question. Is there a TV show or a movie that you are currently like obsessed with, or are you binging a TV show?
So, I think my freshman or sophomore year of college, I watched the show Arrested Development, and it's kind of Office style, but in my opinion, it's completely different. And the humor, I just enjoy the humor better. I like the show better. I was never an Office girl. But I think Arrested Development is hilarious, and the type of characters are really funny on it. And then
is it on a streaming service?
It's on Netflix.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners where to watch,
It's on Netflix. It has Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, Portia de Rossi.
I love Will Arnett.
A bunch of big funny people. And so then like a year ago, I found this podcast called Smartless with Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean Hayes.
I love Will Arnett. I know I just said that, but I love him.
Sean Hayes did like Will and Grace,
right,
and all that stuff. And Jason Bateman's been an actor since childhood, and Will Arnett. And so they do a podcast where one of them brings on a guest and the other two don't know who it is, and then they interview them for like an hour. And it's so good. It's super funny, and it's always people from the industry usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll bring on Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. Just because they can do that. So I started listening to that when I work out, because I feel like I'm learning something, but it also like distracts me enough. And then I guess they went on tour like a year ago, and they made a documentary out of their tour. But most of the tour is just like the banter between the three of them. And then they'll show like 5 minutes from the guest. And it is just so funny, because listeners, I might sound positive and cheery, but sometimes I can be a little sassy. And Jason Bateman's humor, and I just really resonate with him as a person. And I think he's hilarious. And just like seeing their interactions is really funny.
Love that.
So I would recommend that. It's called Smartless on Tour, and that is now on Max, HBO. But Arrested Development is on Netflix. So I just like watching funny things, really.
Yeah.
Or I'm a big like documentary person. Like, I love learning. I'll talk about my favorite movie of all time, The Martian.
Okay.
Not only because it has Matt Damon in it, listeners love Matt Damon. But I love it because he's just basically talking to himself the entire movie. And I think it's done very beautifully seeing an actor work in isolation. And how like that changes.
That is why I love the Jake Gyllenhaal movie on Netflix. I think it's called like 911 or something.
Oh, yeah, you've told me about it. I haven't watched it.
It's like the same thing.
Right.
And I know Jake Gyllenhaal can be a controversial actor. Wow. But in this movie, it's the same thing. It's basically him for 2 hours. And there's like some parts where he's like, where the phone is on speaker so you can hear the other person. But the other person's not in the room.
Right.
It's just him.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's just like, I can't fathom how he memorized that much.
Right.
Like, as a performer, I really can't fathom that. Let alone, it was like not a happy movie. So like really having to go into that place in seclusion, like just being completely by yourself, not like having the camaraderie of other actors to be like, oh, that was kind of a dark scene, you know? And like kind of talk about it after. Like it's
I think it's the ultimate acting challenge. Also, like just the rush you get on stage from like having the first line or being alone on stage for like 3 minutes. I couldn't imagine having a whole out like 90 minutes just to yourself. Like the adrenaline, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good rec.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, next question.
Yeah.
I just graduated and our entire friendship has been in very close proximity. Like, and by very close proximity, everyone, I mean for the last year of college, she literally lived 5 steps away from me. Like, she moved in across the courtyard. So going from that to now we are in a long distance friendship, a quite long distance friendship now. When I moved to New Hampshire, even further away, what is like, I mean, I know we've only been doing it for like a month or so now, but what is something that like, do you have any advice for people who go from such a close proximity friendship to a long distance friendship?
Yes, especially you're not the first person I've done this with. I think it's kind of different depending on the friendships, but what I like about all of them is that A, whenever you need the person, they're going to be there. And B, we can pick up exactly where we left off. And I think if you're committed to listen, long distance friendships take work at the end of the day. And if you're not committed to like really being in this person's life, or you know that they're really there for you and they're really your friends, then it's just not worth it. So you have to be committed to like being there for each other. And all of these people that, have moved away, I know are going to be in my life forever without a doubt. And you're obviously one of them. So the biggest thing is like communication, but also not putting pressure on it. I have a friend who I'll Snapchat like 5-minute long Snapchat video vlogs. And she might not respond for weeks, but when she does, it's like she read it that day and then she'll respond to me and I'll get back to her, Yeah, I just think it's an ebb and flow and it's always going to change. But like, if you're ever in town, like I'm going to make time for you, even if it's like for 3 hours, I will spend those 3 hours with you.
Even in just like this past month of us doing it, right? We like come up with our little things. Like we try to call each other in the morning because we know that like starts our day off good. We like chatting, and Kat always wakes up with a lot of thoughts in her head. Like she's been thinking all night while she's sleeping, and then she wakes up and she has a lot of thoughts in her head. So we talked about how we both like calling each other in the morning, but like even the past few days, we haven't been able to do that. I am 2 hours behind her. So if I sleep in a little bit, we can't really do that. And also she started her summer class. So like even just we went from both of us really not doing anything for 3 weeks to now she's doing a full on summer class and she has that, and then she's going on vacation next week. So even though it's the summer and you'd think like, oh, this is probably the easiest time for us to maintain our long distance friendship, honestly, right now is probably harder than the semester will be because neither of us are on a schedule. Whereas like,
and I'm a grandma, and
right,
I go to bed early.
Right. And me being 2 hours behind, that doesn't help. So it's like once we get to me having a job and me kind of having a schedule and her starting semester and her having a schedule, we can be like, hey, Saturday mornings, let's call and chat and have coffee virtually together, you know, or whatever. But you have to, if I didn't know the Kat was starting her college class this week, right? I might be like, what the heck? She's just not talking to me. Why isn't she talking to me? But because we were communicative and she was like, hey, just so you know, my econ class is starting this week and I'm going to have to do work for it every day. I'm like, okay, great. I will probably still call her, but when she doesn't answer, I'm like, okay, she's doing homework. And I don't freak out because I'm like, okay.
Or I'm accidentally playing The Sims all day.
Right. That was yesterday. Right. But it's just like you have to communicate with the person.
You just have to communicate extra because you're not there.
When we were living so close together and so involved in each other's lives, I knew her schedule like the back of my hand, even if she didn't tell me, because I was there, you know, like we would be seeing each other every day because we were in at least one class together. So it'd be like, what do you have going on today or whatever.
Right.
But now it's like we have to communicate that extra 5 minutes a day to be like, hey, this is what I have going on the next week or whatever. Because I will know, I'm not going to know your school schedule next year because I'm not going to be in school.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just like, it's just different. And you have to learn how to communicate to each other in a better way.
I think a lot of it is also intentionality.
Yeah.
And like, so my friend who's been in Boston, some days, like randomly, I'll get a letter from her in the mail.
Right.
And it's like maybe a page, but it like warms my heart. It's like she took the time out of her day to write me a letter, and then she took the time to go to the mailbox and like send it to me,
get a stamp.
And now I have it here, and she's thinking of me. Exactly. Like there's a couple of processes involved with getting a letter. And you're like, Liz, you're terrible at mailing stuff out. So really nice context. We had our grad announcements done for like 4 days, and it took her forever to like go to the mailbox.
Yeah, I would walk Peter and I'd be like, dang it, I forgot the grad announcements.
It's like, oh well. But I think it's the same thing. Like I'm learning how to crochet, right? And I ordered one to make for you.
Right.
Even though I'm not going to see you for like months, it's like that way you can have it, and whenever you see it, you'll be like,
it's going on my desk.
And like you made me flowers and I hung them all over my wall.
Right.
And so that's again just like a reminder of you and your spirit and your kindness. So every time I look at that, I'm like, Liz is here for me, you know? I'm trying to think of other advice for long distance friendships. Okay, here's 2 things that I just thought of. I think the transition to go to a long distance friendship is just like okay, let me set this up. Okay. When I first became friends with Liz and we got closer, I did not have a boyfriend. I have not dated anybody since high school, right? And so the adjustment to me having someone else in my life and us being friends was a big adjustment for our friendship, right? And it took more communication and more effort. And I think it's kind of the same principle that applies when you go long distance, especially for someone who you are in more constant communication with, right? Like my other friends who moved away, love them so much, but we would never talk every single day, you know? But for us, we do. And so it's just putting in that extra step of effort.
We don't, like, if we go a couple days without talking, neither of us freak out. But if we go a couple days without talking, we probably at least exchange one text that day. Or we have a Snapchat streak, so we exchange a Snapchat, you know? It's like we are interacting in some way every single day, and that is rare for a friendship because, like, I never get sick of her. And it's weird. And I'm the type of person who, like, not to get into a therapy session, but that's why a lot of my relationships don't work out, is because I get sick of people. Like, I cannot be around people very frequently. But, like, even in the last month of me living in Stillwater, Kat and I actually, more like the last semester, we saw each other every day pretty much, because we were prioritizing each other so much because we knew we only had a finite amount of time left living in the same city for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. And those are some of my favorite memories.
Right. And we started we started doing all the things that like we would say we wanted to do, but we never did. And then we were like, oh, shoot, we only have a month left. Let's actually start doing these things. We started going out and doing a lot more things. It created so many memories. I agree. And it was just like my last semester of college was my favorite semester of college because I feel like I did all of the things that I wanted to do in college with someone who I think is going to be in my life for the rest of my life, you know?
Well, and it's interesting, like, how many people you might say that sentence to in your lifetime, and how I know I can attest, like, I have seen that not play out so many times.
You are primarily a performer, but you have wardrobe crewed, run crewed, assistant stage managed, directed, and so on. But how would you say having such like a diverse experience and background in theater and like having all of these experiences doing different things makes you just a better theater practitioner, and you're a teaching artist now as well. So how would you say that like makes you better equipped for your future endeavors?
You're so kind. So a little backstory, like I came to college and I wanted to get a BA in theater because I wanted to be a theater teacher. That was my original goal. And then I was like, well, maybe I kind of like this performing thing.
Right.
And maybe I have the confidence to kind of go for it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but I would love to get my double major so that I am still getting a major in education, so that if I do become a teacher, I have the tools to succeed.
Right.
And I just picked social studies because I can't spell, and math and science that's just not my side of the brain.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the mindset I came in with. And as part of like diversifying my portfolio, if you think about it in the teaching aspect of it, it's like, I want to be able to tell my kids everything I learned in college, and I want to give them the tools that I learned to succeed. And if I want to do that, I need to diversify and learn how to be a wardrobe manager and learn what that paperwork looks like, and same for all the other areas. You know, if I just stick to performing my whole college career, I would never know the jobs of an ASM, and I would never have like the paperwork and the outlines. And now I have those tools. So let's say I do become a performer, and now I know how to read that and get back to stage management on time and in the proper way, right? But if I do become a teacher, I can be like, listen, this is what I had in college and this is what it looked like. So we're going to use this so you can be better set up for success. As far as like finding my calling, depending on, the role, I think it's really all different, and it depends on the production you're doing and the people you're working with. I have found, I think, the most joy in performing because I'm only responsible for myself. And granted, like, I'm responsible for relationships on stage and stuff like that, and maybe I just kind of want to explain something, and maybe I don't need to, but listener, if you're out there and if you're listening at all, if you're like, Pat, so you've done all these different areas, like, why? I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to answer it for myself first. So I've done all these different things, like, why do I want to perform and teach, right? My answer to that is, and Liz can attest to this because she's seen how it affects me, when I am in a performance position, is there's nothing more invigorating and intoxicating for me. Like, when I am performing in a show, in whatever capacity, all I want to do is talk about the show and the character and the research I'm doing, because it's just, first of all, the idea of being a professional performer is crazy because we just play dress up and tell stories all day. And that, if that's not the most exciting thing ever, that could be your job, it just makes my heart so happy, and it lights my soul on fire. And I want to do it for as long as I see a career in it and see that it makes me passionate. Right? Does that make sense? And then teaching comes into it because, yeah, so my family is all from East Texas, and I have probably 12 generations of teachers in my blood. So teaching is in my blood. I've taught to my stuffed animals since I was a little kid. I'm in my econ class right now, right? And I'm talking out loud and doing the homework as if I'm teaching. It's just ingrained in me. And I love the idea, even if it's just mentoring, of helping other people know what I didn't know. I think especially in the industry, it can be hard, to find a way in. So if I can help somebody do that, then I want to do that. Even with Sav, you won't be here next year, but I'll be there to help her out and be like, you should audition for this. Let me help you with your Shakespeare monologues, stuff like that. Because I never had that. And so that is why I perform, and that is why I love to teach. And I want to make sure when I do teach/direct that people walk away having learned something, right? So I'm getting ready for a children's camp that's a week long, and we're doing the Jungle Book, and it's really not that deep, but I've made a whole packet with curriculum in it from Oklahoma State standards, just because I want these 8-year-olds to walk away being like, this is what I learned at camp, and I now know how to be a better performer, whatever. And so that is why I have personally stuck to performing as opposed to moving into stage management or another area, is just because it doesn't bring me as much excitement as performing does. But I loved having those experiences, obviously, because I think it makes you a better performer, and it makes you just a better theater artist in whatever capacity you would be. So now, having said that, Liz, why are you sticking to teaching and sound designing and audio engineering?
So my high school theater experience was you performed. We had a stage crew, but like they really just moved the set pieces. It wasn't like they built the set or they helped with the lighting or they helped sound or the costumes or anything like that. They just moved the set. So it wasn't like I really had any other options. And I was in choir. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just sing in the musicals. So that's what I did. So when I came to school, that's what I did.
But was it fulfilling for you?
Yes. It at the time, it was the thing I loved the most. And I think specifically dance was what I loved the most because I was always a competitive dancer. That was always what I wanted to do. And musicals allowed me to dance on stage and be recognized for it in a capacity that wasn't dance competitions. And so I loved doing musicals in high school. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do in college. I came to college. I started doing it. And I was in the middle of my freshman year musical at OK State, Bye Bye Birdie, doing that where I was dance captain. And so I loved it because basically all I was doing was dancing. I was like, I love this. And then COVID happened, got shut down, didn't do shows for a year or so. And then I was in the first musical back, Theory of Relativity, and it was just like a different experience for me. It was just, I wasn't as fulfilled. And I don't know if it was the break that gave me time to like be away and then go back. But it was like, even in that time away, I didn't really like miss performing, you know? It wasn't like I needed to be performing, but I didn't know what else to do. So then my junior year,
right,
they needed a board op for a show and I needed a practicum.
right.
And I was like, okay, because the sound designer, Lee, who was our now head of theater, he was like, we like more responsible people to be board ops because it's a little bit more complicated than run crew. You have a little bit more weight on your shoulders because if you press the button at the wrong time, the entire audience will know. So I was like, okay, great. He could tell I wanted a little bit more info, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so he like walked me through some of his process during tech and like showed me the system a little bit more sound wise. And I was like, I kind of like this. And then I was working for Stillwater Children's Theater, so I started doing the sound for them and I revamped their sound stuff. And then that fall, after I worked on that show, he was like, sound design is being offered. I want you to take the class. I was like, oh, yes, please. Took it. as soon as I started working in that class, I knew that that's like what I wanted to do. And then I worked on every single show my senior year, and it still is just always what I want to do. And I think what the difference is with performing, I felt like there was a piece of my brain that wasn't being accessed. Whereas with sound design and audio engineering, yes, I have that very creative part of my soul, but I also am a very analytical thinker and a very critical thinker and like using the science part of my brain. And sound design and audio engineering allows me to use both of those simultaneously. And I love that.
I just want to say, first of all, as your best friend, but also as someone who's just observed your growth, how inspiring it is that out of college, you have a full year-long contract job. Okay. And I want to give some context and then I'll jump back to this. There is not a lot of job security with the theater industry if you don't do the work for yourself. Coming into college, I was so naive. I was like, the professors are going to help us. And Liz was like, Kat, they're not going to hold your hand. Like, you have to do it all yourself. And I was like, what? And I'm still working on it. I'm taking the steps that I think are necessary with your help along the way. Anyway, all of this to say, for example, my brother is graduating as an architect and he has a job at an architect firm lined up out of college because he gets to go to job fairs and do interviews at job fairs and talk to people there and be like, oh, is your firm hiring? Yes, I'm going to apply. That is not how it is being a theater major. As a theater major, and even in the tech side of things, you can't go to a job fair and be like, you hiring actors? Like, that's just not how it works. And so when you were in your job search process, the fact that you applied for over 30 jobs, heard back from 95% of them, had all of this interview experience, it is just so crazy admirable to see, because it's kind of rare to see someone walk out with this good of a contract right out of college. And it's just very impressive, especially because your contract is in sound design and teaching and what you're passionate about. So I'm just really excited to see your growth and see you impact all of these kids. And just know that like you're such an inspiration. And like, again, with the accountability thing, like that makes me want to work harder and want to work on my website and look on Backstage every day,
Right. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
Would you say that slay is a word that is in your vocabulary? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. How did you pick it up?
From you.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Are you kidding me?
You didn't say it before me?
They kind of said it at the summer camp I worked at last summer, but I never liked the word.
Oh.
No offense.
That's fine.
But I like in our theater department, it just became a word to say. So I started saying it.
Oh, wow. See, okay, so I didn't think that I was the reason you started saying it again. That's so funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Do you have any other words that so slay is my defense mechanism when I don't know what else to say in a conversation. So if I have awkward silence, I'll be like, slay, slay, while I think about something else. Do you have any other words like that?
Liz, I've been thinking about this question for days. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But I misinterpreted the question entirely when you told me it a couple days ago. I thought it was like a word or phrase that you say that like empowers you, hypes you up.
Oh, okay.
But so the answer is no. I don't have a word. Like I'll say slay because people say slay.
Right.
But I don't have my own version of that, right?
Yeah.
But instead I'm going to answer the question I made up for myself.
Okay.
Which is what I thought you meant, like slay to you is empowering, right? But I was sitting on the couch today and I was like, oh, I know my phrase.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is a phrase. I'm going to tell a backstory because I have to add the drama.
Okay.
So whole family's from East Texas. I never grew up with an accent, but now when I go home, I have an accent all of a sudden and I become very sassy. And it's kind of fun. So this phrase probably originated from that. And it's something I say to my mom every time I answer the phone. And now it's something Garrett's saying. It's something you say. And
I know what it is.
I know you do. I love it because it brings me so much happiness and it reminds me of my mom ultimately. But I also just think it's funny. So we'll do a demo, listeners. When Liz and I answer the phone, this is what we say. You have to say it. Ready? Hey, girl.
Hey, girl.
You have to say it like elongated girl. And it like, I just think it's so fun and happy and joyous. But I realized that was my version. I was like, yes. Hey, girl. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. We're coming to the end of the episode. Do you want to tell them your Instagram to follow you and stuff?
Yes, my Instagram is instagram.com/ just kidding. Isn't that funny? It's kat.wardell, Wardell. So kat.wardell.
Great. And her name will also be the title of this episode. So if you just search her name on Instagram, you should be able to find her.
I'm public. My last photo is with Elizabeth. So
it is. Any last remarks for the hopeful listeners?
Yeah. Sorry. Also, if there's like so much breath on the mic, I just talk with a lot of laughter. Anyway, I talk with laughter. What the heck? Anyway, I think my advice to listeners who are interested in the theater industry at all, even just, want to dip their toe in, is that at the end of the day, the two things that are gonna get you far in this field, not that I'm kind of really in it, I guess I am. Anyway, two things that are gonna get you far is hard work and being kind. At the end of the day, my mom always taught me I might not be the best at everything, but if I can be the hardest worker, then that's what counts. So that's something I try to do with everything in life. Shout out, Mom. And then being kind, it goes a long, long, long way, especially when people are tired, long rehearsal days. And even if it's just like smiling and saying thank you and being polite and respectful, there's a lot of people who don't do that, or were never taught to do that. And I think it definitely makes a difference and an impact. Yeah. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you guys so much for listening. If you are listening, if you're out there.
Right.
Episode one, done, in the books. Again, follow at say_slay_podcast on Instagram. That is where all the updates will be, teases for future guests, and all the links to where you can listen. So yeah, give me a follow there. Thank you so much, Kat, for being here. Thank you guys all for listening, and go out and slay.
Slay.
Okay, bye everyone.
You want me to do a musical outro? Say slay. Yeah, you should cut that.